To understand my consumption journal, it might help to understand a little bit about where I live. So this video is taken on the Nuna by my house in Cambridge Bay or Iqaluit, Nunavut. It's a small community in the high Arctic of Canada. It's about 1,800 people, and all 25 communities in Nunavut are fly-in, fly-out communities, which means they're not connected to anywhere by roads, which means that all goods and people and anything that come in or out of our communities have to go either by air or by barge. So, living remotely in small towns with few stores means that we have almost no chance for casual consumption. In my experience, I also feel very little social pressure to consume in Cambridge Bay, primarily for two reasons. The first is that Nunavut's a territory where many people don't have their basic needs met. 70% of our households are classified as food insecure, and many Nunavummiut don't have safe or adequate housing. Secondly, Inuit culture, in my experience, is very much focused on relationships and not as individualistic as the culture I grew up in, for sure. Okay, now for the specifics of my situation. So my husband and I own a condo. We specifically chose to buy a condo instead of a standalone house for many reasons, one of which is that living in a two-story condo building saves Nuna. It helps keep our town footprint smaller, and it's also more energy efficient to heat and to operate. We believe very strongly in this type of collaborative consumption. Also, water and sewage is trucked into and out of our houses, so keeping our town footprint smaller by living in a multi-story, multi-home unit has a big positive impact on our municipal service efficiency and on our town's fuel usage. Okay, downsides to housing. So all of our power in town comes from diesel, and my condo building doesn't currently have any renewable energy and doesn't have any plans to install any renewable energy like solar or wind options, but this could be something I could bring up at our next condo meeting. Also, our home is much bigger than we need it to be for two people. Okay, on to transportation. So on the plus side, I don't own a car. My husband and I are 38, and we have walked everywhere as our daily mode of transportation for our entire adult lives. Many people in Cambridge Bay own vehicles, and we definitely could if we wanted to, but we've made a conscious choice to live in places and in ways that don't require us to drive for our daily transportation needs. We do, however, own quads, and we use those to get out on the land and go fishing and do the things we like to on the Nuna. The downside of living where we do is that anytime we want to leave our community, we have to fly. So that comes with a huge cost to the environment. The cute kid sitting next to me on the airplane is my husband, Jonathan, which takes me to my next point of family planning. John and I have been together since we were just tiny little babies. That's us at our wedding when we were 24, so we've been together for 20 years. And we have also made the conscious choice not to have children. There were many factors that went into that, but one of them was definitely the idea that our resource usage will end with us. That said, holy heck, do we own a lot of stuff. A fact that was made abundantly clear as we packed up for 2.5 months of working remotely from Cape Breton, where our families live. We left Cambridge Bay and decided to take a short vacation to Lake Louise before heading to Nova Scotia. When we landed in Edmonton, I got my hair cut and my nails done, which is a special treat as we don't have a hairdresser and esthetician in Cambridge Bay. But this is likely a kind of consumption that would be a part of my regular life if we did, because I continued to get my nails done the whole time I was in Nova Scotia. So vacation done, we land in Nova Scotia, I get a rental car, again, a different kind of consumption than's in my day-to-day life, and we get to our apartment in Cape Breton. These are pictures of pretty much all of the items that I bought to duplicate a home office in our rental apartment. These are things that we already own in our home. I bought these just to have for our work from home situation. They're things that I'll donate when we're done with them, but this illustrates the extreme privilege that we have as child-free people with 2 professional jobs. We have a lot of disposable income. Okay, thinking about food. So on the road and at home. In Cambridge Bay, we make most of our food and beverages ourselves. So there's my French press and my husband's tea kettle. We eat mostly vegetarian. Honestly, that's primarily because I feel best when I eat that way, but I also do have ethical issues with the factory farming of animals and the toll that industrial meat production has of the Earth's resources. We do, however, eat a fair amount of country food. For us in Nunavut, country food means food from the land. So things like Arctic char, trout, cod, umimak, or muskox, which is my favorite country food, tuktu or caribou, which is the staple in most places. Things like whale or muktuk, geese, goose eggs, berries, things like kaplaks or blueberries some places, things like mountain sorrel, etc. I also really love the tradition of sharing country food. It's so special when friends or students gift me food from the land, and similarly when I share food with others that I've harvested. My husband and I both come from families that hunt and harvest in Nova Scotia, and while we spent time there, we got to have lots of wild game and also forage for berries and mushrooms in the woods for the first time in 20 years, which was deeply gratifying and very special. I did go shopping a little bit while I was in Cape Breton. So I ended up going to get my sister some new shoes when I noticed the state of hers. She's a mom who doesn't always prioritize herself. This made me reflect on the fact that I buy a lot of things for other people. I think I feel guilty about the amount of money that I have, given the situation that I grew up in, and spending it on other people helps me with those feelings of guilt. While we were shopping, her husband spotted these rainbow shoes, and I had to have them. That made me realize how much I use my belongings to express myself. I am a queer person. I didn't come out until later in life, and it's become really important to me to make that more visible to others over time. So I own a lot of rainbow stuff. That brings me to these earrings that were delivered to Nova Scotia while I was there. I had them custom made from Rolling Stone beads in Nunavut. I'm including a section at the end of this project about makers that I love from Nunavut, and I'll put her contact info there. This made me think about how much of what I buy is made by friends or other people in Nunavut. Most of the clothing, the jewelry, the outerwear, a lot of art, just a lot of what I buy in my day-to-day life is made by people who live where I live. But that also made me think I own a lot of duplicate items as well. So I think living in the north tends to build kind of a mentality of caching or stockpiling. You need to have a plan for now, but also anticipate your needs and the needs of others into the future as well. And that's kind of a remote living mentality. So that's something I need to look at. However, I did think about the fact that we do a good job of not buying things that aren't that functional or can't be used all the time. So for example, we don't buy things like Halloween costumes. We don't buy like ugly Christmas sweaters for parties or something. Try really hard to use things that we already have when special occasions like that come up. So I like to focus on makeup and stuff for Halloween. It's a picture of my sister and I actually went out trick-or-treating together while I was there. I also looked at the toiletries that we use. First of all, I use a lot of different things, but when I looked at them, everything comes in plastic. Everything's disposable. Because we don't recycle anything in Nunavut and put all our garbage, all of this just becomes toxic fumes burned at the dump. So I think this needs to be a place where I focus the action part of my project. The final aspect of my consumption I reflected on was how I socially consumed. I love being outside or at home with people the most. These are all free activities. I also reflected on the fact that I don't buy gifts for special occasions at all. Not for Christmas, not for children, not for family. I make no exceptions. That might sound harsh, but it's really important to me to examine why I do things and to ditch practices that don't align with my values. For the kids in our lives, that might sound really harsh, but we started RESPs and contributed to them for our nieces and nephews, and we do lots of things with them. We travel with them, we play with them, we create with them. We take friends and family on trips. I've gotten a tattoo with my sister. We built a backyard oasis for my parents. We do things for the people that we love and care about, but we don't purchase things often, and we don't do it for many people. I feel like time and energy are our most precious resources, and those are the real gifts that we have to give each other, and they shouldn't be attached to a certain time or a certain event, for me personally. On to advertising. So, as I wrote about, advertising isn't a big part of my life as an autistic kid living in the Arctic. In my daily life, physical ads don't really exist in small town remote life. Digitally, I still don't consume a lot of advertising because I'm an autistic person with lots of sensory sensitivities. I don't spend a lot of time on social media. I don't watch a lot of television. When I do, I mute the advertisements in between the show that I'm watching. So I get most of my marketing through email or snail mail, sometimes through social media, but most of it's from places that I already buy from. Also, as an autistic person, I'm just not as influenced by marketing. So one of the blessings and the curses of having an autistic brain is that we're not as easily swayed or influenced by social cues because we just don't pick up on them. One really interesting thing I did notice in paying attention to the advertisements I received is how many of them were from Nunavut companies. Also paying attention to and recording the data on the advertisements I got allowed me to make a really useful observation that I'll comment on in the second part of this project. So I took a last look at my consumption over the period of this project just to look for anything I had missed. And I found that the remainder of my purchases fell into two main categories. The first was Indigenous made items. So I found that whether they were made by former students of mine or people that I knew or Indigenous people in the places I was visiting, I definitely feel called to purchase items from people that I know or people that make things in ways that I support. And that happens to be a lot of Indigenous makers, which makes sense given the way that I live and the culture I live in. The second thing I noticed, which was very illuminating for me and brought up a lot of feelings, was that many things I purchased would fall into the category of disability supports. So whether that be software that would help me take the ideas from my mind and pull them out into ways I can use in academic research, whether that be software to read things to me, or track the time that I'm spending when it becomes clear that I am struggling to get through this program with my neurodivergent brain. I spent a lot of money and time and energy purchasing things to support the way that I learn. I purchased all of my textbooks for all of my courses this semester in triplicate. I purchased a physical copy, a digital copy, and an audiobook copy. I need that support. That's not optional for me, is what I found. I need to, if the primary way that I'm going to be expected to learn is through reading things on my own and synthesizing my own knowledge, and I'm not going to have somebody talk to me about those things, then I need to try and get that information into my brain in as many ways as possible. That opened up a whole kind of can of worms for me. My disability diagnosis is fairly new. I was just diagnosed as autistic a few months ago this summer. So
more on that to come.